Introduction. Day with clear sunshine makes us happy. When it is too hot, we are happier to see the cloud and have rain. Our habits depend on the type of climate we have during a period. Weather is so important that there are daily forecasts about it on the television, radio, and in the newspapers. Let us know about weather and climate. Objectives. At the end of this lesson, you will be able to define weather and climate, understand a weather report. You might have come across the situation that a sunny morning suddenly changes to a cloudy day and it starts raining heavily. Or heavy rain vanishes within few minutes and gives way to bright sunshine. This is called change in weather. The temperature, humidity, rainfall, wind, and other factors are called the elements of weather. The weather of a place depends on these factors. Weather is about the various changes that occur in the atmosphere of our Earth. The weather is such a complex phenomenon that it can vary over very short periods of time. Do you know what the reason of changing weather is? The sun causes all changes in the weather. Energy absorbed and reflected by the Earth's surface, oceans, and the atmosphere play important roles in determining the weather at any place. Also, deviation in the Earth's orbit, continental drift, and greenhouse effect are the additional causes of the changes in weather. Rachel is looking at weather report in newspaper. Here is a weather report for you. As from the report you can see, date, month and days are given in the first row of the table. In the second row, weather of respective day is shown. In third row, minimum and maximum temperatures of the day are shown. These minimum and maximum temperatures are accorded by special thermometers called maximum and minimum thermometers. In the fourth row of the table, you can see the humidity. Humidity is measured by hygrometer. In some weather reports, a row for rainfall is also given. Rainfall is measured by an instrument called rain gauge. Let us know how climate is different than weather. The average weather pattern taken over a long time, say 25 years, is called the climate of the place. If temperature at a place is high most of the time, it is said to have a hot climate. If it has heavy rainfall in addition to high temperature, then we say that the climate of that place is hot and wet. For recording climate conditions, the mean temperature of a given month for a particular place is found in two steps. First, average of the temperatures recorded during the month is calculated. Summary. Let us summarize what we have learned. The day-to-day condition of the atmosphere at a place in terms of temperature, humidity, rainfall, wind speed, etc. is called the weather at that place. The average weather pattern taken over a long time, say 25 years, is called the climate of the place.
Weather and climate are two different terms with different meanings, although they are interrelated. These two terms have the same elements, which make up our weather and our climate. The elements of weather and climate include measurement of wind speed and direction, humidity levels, precipitation, air pressure, cloud cover, cloud types, temperature, and type of rain and amounts. However, out of those, there are five basic elements: temperature, air pressure, wind, humidity, precipitation. Everyone knows what temperature is. Whenever we discuss the weather, temperature is one of the few elements that come up. Temperature is the measurement of the amount of the kinetic energy present in the air, which manifests itself through heat or cold. People uses different scales for temperature such as Kelvin, Celsius, and Fahrenheit. Temperature is one of the most important elements of weather and climate because it influences other elements such as precipitation, pressure, and humidity. Another essential element is the air pressure, especially when it is talking about changing or creating atmospheric conditions. Air pressure is the result of the pressure created by the weight of the air in the Earth's atmosphere. It is the weight of the air resting on the Earth's surface. This is also called barometric pressure, named after the instrument used to measure it. Pressure is shown on a weather map, often called as synoptic map with lines called isobars. The temperature increases in the stratosphere because of the ozone, which absorbs the ultraviolet radiation that is concentrated in this layer. The ozone is extremely important for us humans because it absorbs ultraviolet radiation from the sun. If the ozone was not around or if it decreased, there might be an increase in skin cancer. Wind, the movement of air, is one of the main forces of weather and climate. The majority or extreme events like thunderstorms and hurricanes are driven by wind. Wind is the large-scale movement of air from an area of high to an area of low pressure in the atmosphere. The speed and strength of this element is determined by the distance between the low and high pressure areas, as well as the differences in air pressure. There are six types of wind. 1. Dipolar easterlies or dipolar Hadley cells. 2. The westerlies. 3. Trade winds or tropical easterlies. 4. The doldrums. 5. Periodic winds. And 6. Local winds. Humidity is the amount of water vapor in the atmosphere. It is the measurable amount of moisture in the lower atmosphere. Water vapor is nothing more but water and gas state. The humidity element of weather makes the day feel hotter and can be used to predict storms. Although humidity can be felt, it is usually visible to the naked eye. We all know that any form of water is needed and important for human life. Precipitation is water in different states, which form after condensation turned water vapor into solid or liquid form, which falls to the ground once it becomes too heavy to stay in the air. It primarily is the result of evaporation and condensation. Precipitation is simply any water form that falls to the earth from cloud formations. As an element of weather and climate, precipitation can determine if outdoor activities are suitable. It is long-term and a predictable factor of a region's makeup. Precipitation is the product of rapid condensation process, and if the process is slow, it will only produce cloudy skies. Precipitation could take on the form of drizzle, mist, rain, hail, graupel, or snow.
What's the difference between weather and climate? Weather is the short-term condition of the atmosphere in a given location. The key here is that we're talking about the short term. Weather describes what's happening right here, right now. Here are some examples of statements that describe the weather. It's pouring outside. That's describing the weather because it's explaining what's happening right here, right now. It's freezing. That's the weather too. The wind is really blowing. That's the weather. Such a foggy night. That too is the weather. Finally, it's hot today. That also describes the weather. Keep in mind, The weather can be anything on any given day, and while we do see patterns, which we'll talk about shortly, weather can fluctuate greatly. For example, in January in New York City, it's generally cold. But on any given day in January, we could have 75 or 80 degree Fahrenheit weather in New York. It would be strange, but that's the weather. It's a snapshot of what's happening right here, right now. Climate, on the other hand, is the long-term average condition of the atmosphere for a location. The key here is that climate is long-term. It's a snapshot of what we expect to see in a location based on many years of data that has been accumulated and studied and averaged out. So it gives you a picture of what to expect for a particular location, though it's important to keep in mind that the day-to-day weather could be just about anything. Here are some examples of statements that describe the climate of a particular area. It's hot and humid in the Amazon. That's an example of climate. It's not always hot and humid in the Amazon, but on average, that's what we expect to see there. Or if we were to say the South Pole is extremely cold and dry. Generally, that's true, but certainly there are days where it's not true. The Sahara is arid. Yeah, the Sahara Desert is generally very arid and dry, but it does rain there from time to time. New York City is cold in the winter. Again, that's true, but we could have a warm day in January in New York. Finally, India experiences monsoon season in July. What that means is it usually is very wet and rainy in July in India, but that doesn't mean every minute of every day in July will always be wet. So to sum up, weather is what's happening outside right here, right now, while climate is what usually happens here during this time of year. Now, weather is affected by a lot of different things. These are all different factors that give you a sense of what's happening in your location at this moment. These include things like the temperature, the wind, humidity, cloud cover, precipitation, and air pressure. And all of these factors are constantly changing up and down, and together they give you your local weather. Climate, on the other hand, is affected by different things. It's affected by your latitude, how close you are to water. Are you on one side or another of a mountain range? Are you at a high altitude or elevation? Are you near a particular ocean current? Or are you in a particular wind and pressure belt? So climate is affected by many different things, as is weather, and all of those get together to give you a snapshot of what's happening at a particular instant, being the weather, and over a long period of time, being the climate. The reason this is an important distinction to make, that between weather and climate and how they're different, is because we're talking more and more about climate change. Now, when we refer to climate change, we're talking about a change in the climate patterns, which is generally attributed to increased levels of CO2 produced by the use of fossil fuels. So what we're talking about is not a change in the weather for today or tomorrow or next week, but rather a very slow, large-scale change in the average conditions for different locations on Earth. These are very slow changes, and they're generally seen when you look at long-term trends, not at day-to-day conditions. This is why it's so important to understand the difference between weather, what's happening right now, and climate, the big picture illustration of weather conditions on Earth.